Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to the Explainer, everyone. Today, we're going to unpack something that native English speakers use literally all day long without even thinking about it. We are talking about the present simple tense. So let's get right to the mechanics and see how this actually works. Now, take a look at these two phrases. I work versus I am working. Go ahead, take a second. Can you spot the real difference between these two seemingly identical ideas? It's kind of fascinating, honestly, because in a lot of other languages, these two sentences translate exactly the same way. No difference at all. But in English, choosing one over the other completely changes the meaning of what you're trying to say. One represents a permanent reality, while the other is just happening right this second. So let's figure out exactly which one to use and when. Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll hit the grammar foundations. Then, when to use it. Building present simple, simple versus continuous, and we'll wrap up with avoiding common mistakes. All right, starting off with section 1, the grammar foundations. So before we can jump into complex verbs and tenses, we really need to understand our basic building blocks, right? We have to know who or what is actually doing the action. And it all starts with the noun. A noun is simply a word that names a person, a place, a thing, or an animal. It's the absolute core subject of our sentence. And, nouns have some pretty neat categories. For instance, they can be countable, meaning you can literally count them out, like 1 cow, 2 cows, or they can be uncountable, like sand or water, where you just can't count the individual pieces. And this brilliantly illustrates another major distinction we need to make: common versus proper nouns. See, the word country is a common noun. It just names any general place. But the specific country highlighted here, Kyrgyzstan, is a proper noun. Proper nouns name a very specific person, place, or thing. And in English, you're always going to capitalize that first letter. Next up, we have pronouns. You can think of pronouns as these really handy, efficient little substitutes we use so we don't have to keep repeating the same noun over and over again. These are the essential pronouns we use for sentence building. I, you, he, she, it, we, and they. Believe me, we are going to be using these constantly today. And finally, to complete our foundation, we have verbs. Think about it like this. If the noun is the car, the verb is the engine. They are the action engines of our sentences. They show action like work, run, or study. But crucially for our explainer today, they also express time. They tell us exactly when an action is happening. Okay, moving right along to section 2, when to use it. Now that we've got that solid foundation of nouns, pronouns, and verbs, let's establish the exact rules of engagement. There are exactly 5 specific situations where we deploy the present simple tense. First up, permanent situations. These are things that are more or less always true, like I live in New York. Second, routines. What do you do on a regular basis? I wake up at 6 a.m. every day. Third, facts and scientific truths like the sun rises in the east. Fourth, fixed schedules like the flight leaves at noon. And fifth, whenever we use adverbs of frequency, words that tell us how often something happens, always, never, or sometimes. Actually, I highly encourage you to actively think of your own permanent situations and daily routines right now just to lock these rules into your memory. Let's dive into section 3, building present simple. Grammar relies heavily on pattern recognition, and the pattern here is honestly incredibly straightforward. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the base verb behaves. For I, you, we, and they, we just use the base verb, work. But for he, she, and it, the verb actually changes. We just add an S to make it works. That is your crucial baseline right there. Plus, to build negative sentences and questions, we have to bring in our helping verbs. We use do for the first group and does for he, she, it. And check this out. Notice that once you use does or doesn't, the main verb snaps right back to its base form. It becomes work, not works. Now, spelling that third person's S can be a little tricky, but the rules are pretty clear. Normally, you're just adding an S, so dance becomes dances. Simple enough. But if the verb ends in an S, SH, CH, or X sound, where you can almost literally hear the need for an extra syllable, you add ES, so wash becomes washes. And if a verb ends in a consonant followed by a Y, like study, you just drop that Y and add ES to make studies. Just keep in mind, there are a few sneaky irregular exceptions to watch out for, like go becoming goes, or have completely changing shape into has. Time for the main event, section 4, simple versus continuous. This is the ultimate showdown, bringing back that big question from the very beginning. Let's move to and see how this builds our understanding. On the left, I work represents a permanent habit, a routine, or a general truth. By contrast, look at the right. I am working, using that ing ending, is strictly for temporary situations or actions that are in progress right at this exact second. So ask yourself, are you doing it as a lifestyle or are you doing it right now? That is the ultimate deciding factor. But wait, there is a massive exception here, and they're called state verbs. These verbs describe internal mental states, emotions, or ownership. They do not describe physical actions at all. And because they're states of being, they inherently reject the ing continuous form. You simply cannot use the present continuous tense with verbs of emotion, possession, perception, or thought. It just doesn't work. However, there is a really tricky nuance here. Some state verbs actually can become continuous, but only if their fundamental meaning completely changes from a static state to an active physical process. For instance, I think you're right is a static belief, right? It's a state of mind. But if you say, I am thinking about changing jobs, that transforms thinking into an active temporary process of pondering something right there in your brain. And that brings us to Section 5, Avoiding Common Mistakes. Now it's time to arm you against the most frequent grammatical traps that learners fall into. Mistake number 1, misusing those state verbs. Saying, I am knowing the answer is absolutely incorrect because knowing is a state of mind. It's not an action in progress. You got to use the present simple here. The only correct form is, I know the answer. Mistake number 2 is basically the exact opposite, using the present simple for an action that is currently happening right this second. Saying, wait a moment, I talk on the phone is grammatically incorrect. Because the action is totally temporary and happening right at this exact second, we have to switch over to the continuous tense. It should be, wait a moment, I am talking on the phone. So the crucial point is, do not forget the third person S. This is mistake number 3, and honestly, it happens constantly, because a lot of languages just don't change the verb for different people. But in English, for positive present simple sentences with he, she, or it, you literally cannot say she work in a hospital. You absolutely must add that S. It has to be she works in a hospital. And our final common mistake involves asking questions. What time you finish work? Well, it sounds almost right, and people will probably understand you, but grammatically speaking, an entire word is missing. Even if you start with a question phrase like, what time, you can't just drop your essential helping verb. You absolutely must include do or does. The correct structure for sure is, what time do you finish work? To wrap up our explainer today, I really want to leave you with a fun challenge. Look at this multi-layered sentence on the screen. They doesn't eat vegetables right now because they are preferring fruit. There are actually multiple mistakes hidden in this sentence, and they test everything we've talked about today. Helping verbs, time markers, state verbs, the whole shebang. Can you spot them all? Take a screenshot, figure it out, and keep practicing. Mastering this foundation will totally transform your English. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll catch you next time.